Purple Yellow Croc versus Red Purple Law, a soon-to-be banned leader. If you're watching this video in the future, then this leader is likely already banned, and you're watching some history in the making here. This is going to be added to the archives here, as we're going first against good old Red Purple Law here. They did win the die roll, decided to go second. I ended up mulliganing into a pretty solid hand with a Miss Wednesday on 3. I do have a Gadatsu in hand for my 5 Dawn turn, and again, if for those who I don't know how to play against Red Purple Law, at least with this specific style of deck, like, you know, a control deck, is do not attack them, do not feed the Law. I am just going to leave him at 4 life as long as I can here, and then just slowly whittle him down with my big body, is regaining life, yada yada, the general kind of game plan here. So that Gadatsu in hand, pretty awesome for this specific scenario. Gonna go ahead and swing 5 at lead. I'm gonna go ahead and use Miss Wednesday's effect to return a Dawn, get a Dawn back with her effect, and then get a Dawn back to my leader, thus ramping me a Dawn up to 4 Dawn on my opponent's turn. Opponent's just gonna play a Ein and ramp themselves. I'm gonna go up to 6 Dawn here. This is enough to potentially just play a go to Gadatsu. Again, I don't really want to swing lead at this point, so I think that's probably just the play I'm gonna make. That extra Dawn is not gonna do me too much this specific turn. I'm gonna go ahead and KO the Ein. Gadatsu KOing anything if its cost is equal to or lesser than your opponent's life total. Pretty decent card, pretty great card right now in this specific meta, but who knows what it's going to look like in the future. I already have some ideas of how I want to play 08 Croc, so may have a follow-up video eventually, and if you definitely maybe you should subscribe or leave a like to get more information for that in the future. I really appreciate it. But if you like this type of content, definitely feel free to support whenever you can. All right, we're gonna go ahead and see a nice little raise max, gonna minus 3,000 on my Gadatsu. Law wants to use a little bit more Dawn before he starts minusing here. He's gonna go ahead and minus 3, gonna go ahead and bottom deck my Gadatsu. Gadatsu already came in, got its value, took out a 9, but now it's gonna go away here. And now we've got a little bit of a threat here. That is the Kid into a Reiju here. So Kid standing up that Dawn, and then Reiju being pretty nasty here. Opponent's going to go ahead and swing 7k at lead here. We're going to go ahead and activate effect. We're going to continue our ramp plan here because we want to get to our high drops as quick as possible. We do end up finding a second Gadatsu here. Gadatsu is going to allow me to continue to clean up the board here, as kind of my game plan is to swing into things when they're tapped. And then I have a few ways to clean up things before they attack me, but Gadatsu is a pretty good answer here. I do have a Yamato in hand as well. I am at, looks like, I believe 9 Dawn here. I do think like, oh, I could Yamato, KO the Kid, but then not gain any life, or I could like Gadatsu plus, and we're just holding Yamato. I think Yamato out here, just getting rid of the Kid is pretty great, even though Yamato does not gain me a life at this point because I'm at 2 life. I think getting rid of the Kid is just a big scenario. Next turn, I save myself to be able to play out the Searcher as well as the Gadatsu there to clean up the remainder of the board. Though having that Kid off the board does kind of stifle Law's plan to bottom, minus Dawn and then get some Dawn back, right? He's going to have to play some resources from hand to make sure that he stays up in the Dawn count here. But feeling pretty solid here. I am at 2 life. I'm at the golden number for Kid and Killers, and we all know that's going to happen eventually. There's going to be some Kid Killers coming down here. So I am a little potentially worried here. My hand did have a few bricks in it. I had like a Kiku Nojo, which I'm very unlikely to play out in this specific matchup here. It's just a very easy bottom deck target. They're often not going to KO it, right? So I'm not going to gain any life. And also I'm going to try to keep Red Purple Law at 4 life for a large majority of the game here. But they're going to go ahead and bottom deck my blocker. No more ramping for me, but luckily I'm already at 9 Dawn, going to a max of 10 next turn, so I'm not really that upset about it. Opponent does show me a second Reiju, pulling up that hand there, and I'm a little afraid. If they Reiju twice, they do have quite a big grip. I think there's at least 7 cards in hand here, and then going instead of 5k at lead. I really do not want to take that there. My only 1k in hand was the Gadatsu. And then we end up hitting an Okun my way off the top of life here. And I'm thinking about it right now. That, for those who don't know, that is a -1 Dawn into drawing 2 cards. I could use that later for Kiku Noju play, but I do just kind of value the card advantage at this point to try to get some better answers in my hand. And then my leader ability will go ahead and stand up that Dawn that was minused. Opponent going to go ahead and play out a Shirai here. Going a little heavy on the blocks here, potentially to try to save some of his characters from being attacked, just because one way that I can handle things is by using my leader swing here. We're at 10 Dawn. We have a Gadatsu. We're also thumbing a Miss Valentine to potentially search for a Croc, the 8.8 cost Croc. We also have an Ace in hand as well. Ace could come out at some point here. We're going to go ahead and just start with the searcher here. We might actually try to see if we can find the Croc in this specific scenario. So we can go ahead and just slam it down and we find the Croc. Croc Daddy is here. I think Croc Daddy is going to come out to play this turn here. That Gadatsu is still sitting in hand, potentially for a turn later. We're going to go ahead and just see what the opponent does here. We're going to go ahead and just swing 9k into Shiraya here. Opponent's got a big ol' grip. Grip could potentially, you know, 2k, 1k out of it, but unlikely for that to happen at this point. That is using up a lot of resources for just a swing when they have so many other bodies on board. We're going to go ahead and play out the Croc. We're going to try to go back up to 2 life. We're going to go ahead and minus 2 Dawn on play, and then gain a life here. And then that Croc is going to let me set up one of my Dawn on my opponent's turn, and also cycle me a card, so I can get that Okiku out of hand and try to find something worth countering with instead of a brick. Several cards in hand here. One thing I do need to worry about is the potential of the blocker lull that would randomly strip 2 cards out of my hand. That would be pretty annoying, and it is a pretty good countermeasure for red purple law to have into decks like mine. We're gonna see here. If my opponent decides to swing with a Shiraya, I'm not upset, right? If you give me a blocker, every time he swings, it just gives me another thing I can attack into to try to clear board, because again, my game is the long game. I'm just going to make sure that they're starved out of resources and that I'm feeling good here. Opponent's going to go ahead and swing at me here. I'm debating on whether I wanted to play out the Ace the next turn, and by going ahead and giving a 1k here is kind of a way for me to try to stimmy off some of these blows. Typically, it's better to counter out of the low blows instead of waiting for the high blows, because Law can swing pretty high once he starts to get some kid killers out, and Law does have quite a bit of Dawn still available. 6k coming at me. I'm gonna go ahead and just take that. We ended up seeing another ace here. Got 2 aces in hand. Those are gonna be 2 ways to gain life. Don't think I want to go lower, because again, this is not an L. We will not gain a life back, and I don't really want to go to 0 at this point. I want to make sure that I kind of like always stay at 2 to some degree. Gonna go ahead and play out a Kid and Killer here. I do have that nice 0 cost event. I'm going to remember this time to activate Croc's Effect. Croc's Effect does check every single time I was trying to think here. I still had that Kiku, and I think I was going to use that Kiku with the 0 cost event here. I was like debating. It didn't really matter ultimately. I could have used a 0 cost event on a 0 cost event to counter out to 8k. But anyways, Croc's Effect does let you cycle a card by minusing a Dawn. Now his is on an opponent's attack, so it's anytime your opponent attacks. So you don't have to do it the first time. You can do it a later time. So it is a little forgiving if you tend to miss it, but luckily I was able to miss it when it mattered, and was able to get out of that swing there. And now potentially they could go ahead and minus 3 Dawn to bottom deck my Valentine. A little annoying because Valentine was potentially going to be one of my options to clean up the turn, but I might just play the Ace next turn anyways. Going to go ahead and play out a Sachi Penguin here, and does have enough Dawn to get it back, to get 2 Dawn back. So back up to 5 Dawn, going to go up to 7 Dawn next turn. They've got a full board. They've got some things tapped though, and I'm going to try to clean up the board here. Going to go ahead and draw back up to 10 here. We did draw another Gadatsu here, so we could potentially, you know, Gadatsu Valentine, or I think it's worth it to just gain some life here. So we're going to go ahead and go 5 into Kid and Killer. Going to go ahead and get a 1k out of hand. We're going to go 9 into Kid and Killer. Potentially could get blocked here. Yep. See a lot of emphasis on saving it. I'm going to go and send 9 more. That's basically telling me that he doesn't have what it takes to counter out of something. So I'm just going to send everything at it, because again, that Kid and Killer is a big issue. We're going to go ahead and send 10 somewhere else as Ace does gain Rush, because I'm at 2 or less life. Passing to my opponent's turn. He still has a bigger board than I would like at this stage in the game, but if you look, his hand is getting a little bit smaller. He's got 5 cards in hand right now, and I was able to clean up 3 cards on board. Luckily, the opponent did give me the block, right? So that's just like another, like, it's a free attack ultimately, because, you know, they could have just not blocked with it, right? And then they would have had like still a blocker up, right? Something that could attack me potentially next turn, because again, Shiraya copies my opponent's, or copies my or their opponent's power. So it could swing at least a 5k. And then I also just don't want the Shiraya on board in case I wanted to start like attaching Dawn and trying to swing in, because Shiraya just always copies your opponent's leader when they attack or block. So if I had some Dawn sitting on it, even though it's my turn, since it's my turn, that Dawn still impacts it and could potentially block and get some additional value. Law's here is potentially in the tank right now. I'm happy to see that. That means you don't have ways to kill me, right? You have puzzles. And ultimately you can't beat somebody to death with a puzzle. Well, maybe you can, but in this specific scenario, I'm happy to see it. So we've got potentially just like another ace to play out next turn. Or we could go like with a Valentine into try to find another Croc. Or like maybe we could draw a Yamato, something like that. We have a lot of plays that we could make. But we're pretty happy with at least taking one hit and then trying to counter out of the rest of them. So I'm going to go ahead and send 5 at me here. I think this turn is me deciding, do I want to give up something? And I'm going to give up my Wisp Wednesday that I drew for the turn here. Because again, that's just a blocker that's going to get bottom decked most likely with just like an Otama or something. So I really can't rely on that to protect me. So we're going to go ahead and see another 5k at lead. I have a Gadatsu in hand. I might be willing to counter out of it here because I think next turn I'm just going to go for either the ace or the Valentine into a potential Croc. Opponent's going to go ahead and play out the Mr. 2. Mr. 2 is actually pretty annoying in this specific matchup because Mr. 2 can copy the power of any of my characters when it's attacking, and if I am a deck that plays a lot of big powered, high powered characters, that's going to be swinging for 9k or 10k on my opponent's turn, which is very scary for me because I could potentially allow my opponent to go for lethal here. So at this point, we're really looking for something cool off the top. Discarding that Gadatsu was kind of a mistake in hindsight, but I do end up grabbing a Yamato off the life being very, very rewarding this specific game, which is nice to see. So we have a Yamato. I think we even pick up a Yamato off the top of the deck as well. Gonna go ahead and potentially attach one to lead here. I always kind of try to play it out in some degree. Now again, he has the Shiraya out, so if I decide to attach one to lead and then swing 6k at something, he could just counter with Shiraya. Gonna go ahead and swing 6k. He just 2k'd out of it anyways. I'm gonna 10k at one of them. We're gonna 9k at another. And luckily we have that Yamato to clean up the Bond Clay. That Bond Clay is not going to be a threat here. I'm going to potentially leave my opponent with literally just a blocker on board, which is exactly what I want to see at this point. So we're going to go ahead and tap 9, KO the Bond Clay, gain a life, and then we're going to just start feeding him a little bit here. Ultimately, I do have to end the game, right? And so I could potentially try to go for a game on this next turn. Or the following turn. So I want to make sure that Law is a little lower. It is a little dangerous to feed Law. You could feed him the pieces that he needs. Could feed him 4 Kidden Killers. You know, that is a scenario that could definitely happen, and it's happened in the past, but we have to just kind of blindly do it and just hope that we don't get punished for it, because ultimately, you know, our goal is to end the game eventually, right? So passing the opponent's turn, I've got quite a board at this point. We got 2 Yamatos, we got an ace, we got a Croc. That Croc again is going to be able to minus a Dawn, set up a Dawn, and cycle me a card if I remember to do it. That's the big point, the big if. But we'll see here what ends up happening. I do still have 4 cards in hand. I've got a 0 cost counter. Got another ace in hand to potentially gain another life. So I'm like happy to go back to 1. We go ahead and see a hard cast Kidden Killer out on the field. That is a 7k attacker. If he potentially wants to start swinging into my board, which at this point I think going for game is definitely the play instead of trying to deal with my threats, because you know, I could potentially have counter to save my things, right? Or honestly, I'd probably just let one of my things die, depending on what it was. So I think opponent here thinking that is not. I don't think that was an attack declaration yet, but it's a maybe, right? He put Kid Killer in maybe mode, saying maybe I will attack with it. All right, now he's gonna commit to it. Now we're gonna swing 9k, and I think that 9k is just going at lead here. As I don't believe he's sending it at either of my things. We're going to go ahead and take it. It's a Gadatsu into hand here. And then opponent thinking again, that Gadatsu, if I didn't want to play something that would heal me next turn, that Gadatsu could clean up the Shiraya, right? Getting rid of a blocker. But we'll see what the opponent does here. If the opponent wants to just go hyper aggressive, or if the opponent is just going to go very defensive. 1 blocker on board. Could potentially see another blocker going out. Does have 3 Dawn up. That 3 Dawn could represent one of 2 things. Could represent a Shiraya, could represent a Sanji, or 3 Dawn to attach to a Kidden Killer. So 6k going at lead. I'm going to go ahead and double counter out of it here. I do not want to go to 0 because I was a little afraid of a -3 and then a Kidden Killer coming out here. So opponent's going to just play out a Bond Clay here, and then going to tap 3 and play out a Sanji because he has two less Dawn than I do. Going to go ahead and pass back to me. I have a potential of going for game here. Opponent only has 1 card in hand. I have a few attackers here. We do have another Yamato. So that second Yamato that I picked up, one off life and then one off the top of the deck from last turn, will allow me to clean up this Bond Clay yet again, and then, you know, attack into the kid. Now, I am a little afraid because it's likely that at this point my opponent will not block anything, because those blockers could potentially become attackers, right? So we're going to go and just send 6k into Kid and Killer and see what happens here. Opponent debating with one card in hand. Could be a 2k, right? If he decides to save it, he does decide to save it. So I know I have perfect information at this point as to what is in his hand and what is on the board. I just don't know what's in his life. We're gonna go and send the 9k, and then we're gonna think here. I could go and swing all 3 right into his life, but what if he just takes all 3 and then he just gets a bunch of rushers and then I just die? So I decided to go ahead and swing, or play Yamato, pop the Bond Clay, and then I say, all right, do your worst. I have 3 cards in hand, 2 cards in life, a potential cycle off a Croc as well. I mean, if you at this point with 1 card in hand, two characters on board, 10 Dawn, he could potentially math it out. But honestly, at this point, we're just kind of hoping, because if he doesn't, we can squeak it out, right? If he decides to, you know, attack with both, then that, like, if he decides he wants to try to go for lethal, he has to go for game here. He literally can't, you know, not go for game at this point, because if he's swinging with his blockers, if he can't kill me, my colossal board full of 9Ks and a 10K will finish him off. So he's going to go ahead and just start with a 8K at lead. I'm going to activate Croc's ability. We're going to draw one. It's a Crocodile. I don't really want that at this point. All right, I'm trying to go for game. That ace could end up coming in clutch here. We're going to go ahead and reveal the top card. It is a Kiku Nojo. Kiku Nojo could have triggered out and went into play, but it wasn't worth it at this point. It would have just replaced a big body on board. So we're just going to let that go to hand. Unfortunately, was not a counter. Opponent's going to go ahead and swing 9 at lead here, potentially positioning himself up for, you know, a 9, then another 8. We end up hitting the beige, a little luck off the top to stop the Sanji from attacking. That potentially means, like, if he has a Kid and Killer in hand, he could minus and then swing 9k, right? And I think I would just die to that, right? So at this point, we're just like hoping it's not a Kid and Killer. He's gonna go ahead and still -3. Now I'm shaking in my boots a little bit, and it is a Sanji. That is just another blocker here. So he's got 2 blockers up. I have 5 attackers, 6 attackers technically, no cards in hand. I think we're feeling pretty good here, and we have that ace on backup. So we're gonna go ahead and send 5k at lead. He's gonna go ahead and take it. And then I think we're just going to start sending in 9k, 9k, 10k, 9k, 9k. We'll send 9k again. Just going to take it. We're going to send 9k again. If he has exactly what he needs, then, like, that's a little unfortunate. He does end up hitting 2 2ks and a 1k, which is kind of unfortunate. We're going to go send 9k and then 10k. And then this is where the ace comes out and finishes the game here. Ace would replace something on my board, but it was GG's anyways. So clean up that board there. Yes, I have 6 characters on board. Ultimately, that ace would replace an ace anyways, but that is the game. Red Purple Law put in its place right before it's sent off to the ban list, or if it's already on the ban list. And with that, that is the end here. Thanks everyone for watching, and we'll catch you in the next video.